We're now joined by Nisha Biswal, partner at the Asia Group and former deputy CEO at the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. Nisha Biswal, thank you very much for joining us. How much of this is geopolitics and how much of this is because of certain domestic pressures that President Trump may be facing?
Well, look, I do think that the United States and India have a deep strategic relationship. And while we have been seeing some trade tensions that had been grabbing the headlines and had been at the forefront of the U.S.-India equation, we know that the economic and the strategic underpinnings of this relationship are important to both countries. So I do think ultimately what you're seeing now is that both sides are, somewhat recalibrating their approaches to get to a point where we can get back to negotiations and get back to potentially historic and unprecedented deal that will allow the rest of the relationship and the partnership to move forward as well.
Right. Nisha, what's your sense on what Donald Trump wants from the trade agreement or any deal with India right now?
I mean, I think much of what Donald Trump wants, what the United States wants, is really what is on the table, which is for India to enter into a free trade agreement, bilateral agreement with the United States that really opens greater access to Indian markets for U.S. exports, which, addresses some of the non-tariff barriers that have been sticking points, but really that deepens the economic trade in both directions, right? I think that the president of the United States has been very focused on a trade imbalance and wanting to address that. I think that there have been issues that have been in the mix with respect to import of energy and whether that energy is coming from Russia, coming from the United States, and how to change the mix. So I think these are all fair topics of negotiation, and I think that there's a way forward on pretty much all of the areas that the president of the United States has been prioritizing and that the Indian side has been prioritizing. But there was perhaps an optic and a dynamic that had gotten in the way in recent weeks that needed to be cleared through, and the leader level conversations that seem to have taken place, as well as the kind of social media exchanges have kind of created the positive political space for now the negotiating teams to get this done and for hopefully the two leaders to be able to announce something.
Right. What I would also like to ask you, the fact that now both Prime Minister Modi and President Trump have spoken, does this mean that the trade deal has the blessings and we're close to the finish line now?
No, I would not draw that conclusion. And from everything that I've seen or heard of the conversation that the two had, it's a very important positive reset that opens the space for the negotiations to conclude. But I wouldn't say that they have concluded or that this agreement now has been blessed at the leader level. But I think that we are significantly closer to that happening as a result of the fact that the two leaders have spoken, that there's been a bit of a reset in terms of how they're engaging with each other, both personally as well as institutionally in the public forum.
Right. I would also like to ask you about what happens to the larger India-US partnership. Do you believe that the Quad framework is intact? The work that we had initiated under the US-India Compact Initiative, the US-India Trust Initiative, does that remain on track as well as we try and navigate these trade tensions?
Parikshit, what I would say is that the conversations that we've been hearing about 25 years of U.S.-India ties being undone in 25 days. I think that that's overblown. I don't think that that there has been a dismantling of the important architecture of U.S.-India ties. On the other hand, has there been some erosion of trust? Has there been some setbacks that will need to be rebuilt? Yes, I think so. I think that it is in the U.S.'s interest, it is in India's interest to be pragmatic, to continue to build on the strategic ties, on the defense ties, on emerging technology, AI. There's just a lot that our two countries, our two economies, our two private sectors need from each other, and a partnership that should be built on those shared interests, shared goals. But it will take some time to put behind some of the tensions that I think really called into question for many in India, how deep and how strategic the partnership was. Again, I don't think it is a dismantling of the relationship. I do think that there is strong alignment in many areas that will compel both countries, both governments to continue to advance the strategic and the economic partnership.
All right. Thank you very much, Nisha Biswal, for joining us on the program, giving us your view on what's really brought India and US to this juncture and why a lot more needs to be done before we can actually celebrate and clinch a trade deal.
Thank you.
So what's at stake?